So Al Jazeera is reporting that Singapore is set to reinstill corporal punishment, which basically means a 1.2 meter long whip or cane is going to be used on people committed of fraud, of cyber crimes. And this isn't totally unusual for Singapore. And I'm going to explain for the meathead political junkies, political scientists, why this is. So Singapore used to be incorporated with Malaysia, and Singapore still also has a death penalty for crimes like drug trafficking. And there's a couple of reasons why you might think this is. If we're doing like the 2025 like really violent rhetoric, we're just going to say this is just, kind of a national value. Just like in the US, we have the death penalty. But it's actually a little bit different than that. So Singapore is a democracy, but it's not a institutional democracy in the way that, you could actually go to Washington and request a meeting with like a House rep or a senator. Singapore, maybe you do that too. But political scientists have invented this term called a nanny state. And what a nanny state allows us to do is think in terms of the realpolitik, ask questions like why you have the death penalty for drug trafficking. Why do Singaporeans have to think about corporal punishment in their system of law now? But also how those decisions result and just sort of what political life is like. What is a political life like in Singapore? And so it's really wild. Singapore is geopolitically in a unique position. It's also a really diverse country. And so what this means is that, from the 1960s onward, Singapore has had to make concessions. They've had to make very practical policies that cost people representative democracy, doing things like at times favoring or disfavoring certain religious or ethnic groups, trying to fight against that a little bit. But also, they're perfectly willing to stifle the press, stifle freedom of speech. And people have accused elections of corruption and fraud. And so this is a really important issue for a lot of people. The last death penalty in Singapore was carried out in October of this year. And so this isn't like a totally unheard of occurrence. It's, when people talk about these deterrence crimes, it ends up being something you see in the newspaper. And so you can kind of wonder, well, how does that actually work? Is it working? Turns out it doesn't really work. But yeah, this is part of the importance of having a political opinion about the right thing. We can argue about the practical effects of corporal punishment, of human rights, of the death penalty. We can also talk about the institutions or processes that it actually takes to solve longstanding issues that every country has.